And we're live. Welcome to another late night stream where we're going to discuss what's real and what isn't, or what's relevant and what's not. Garda stabbed in attack in Dublin. I was discussing some theories today on what could be going on there. I was speculating, and I got in a little bit of trouble for speculating about what took place in this stabbing that occurred on Tuesday this week in Dublin city centre near Capel Street. The Capel Street, Little Britain Street, didn't know that street existed. At the intersection by the Black Sheep pub, there was a stabbing, and a Garda was stabbed in standard narrative would be a horrific Islamic stabbing attack, migrants gone wild, all the rest of it. And, cut to the chase. I had a theory today on X. I was just kind of entertaining, and I'll tell you how I arrived at that. That basically TLDR. That, like, what if it was a false flag? What if it was fodder for the masses in some kind of way? One of these type of things, wild, wacky, crazy, unhinged, counterproductive conspiracy theories. I didn't suggest that it was that. To be clear, I suggested that it looks a bit that way, right? And I'll tell you how I arrived at that and what my thinking is on this whole event. And it's not as simple as that too. This event taken at face value, there are still I have qualms and questions about it, just even as is, even at face value, there is a little bit more to it. Now, what I will say, well, first off, hello chat, hello viewers. Sorry, it's late, is what it is. We'll get into it all. Good to see familiar people. One of the things about this is that I don't necessarily benefit from it. It's I've been accused of stirring shit, of doing it for clicks, all this kind of stuff. But it's just a little bit of open mind and keeping an open mind and not. There's just something about jumping into some narrative that seems overly prescribed that rubs me the wrong way. I like to keep an open mind, and that's that. But the amount of consternation about it is off the wall, to be honest. But anyway, the stabbing took place on Tuesday. Garda stabbed in Dublin. There was scatty footage came out originally. I see Niall McConnell there. Did anyone else see the images? See the image on the mannequin? I didn't see that. Actually, if anyone has an image of that they can link, there was a picture of the guy on the ground. I'll just assume you all know the background, right? There was a picture of a guy on the perpetrator, stabber, on the ground, and it almost looked like he had a pair of tights over his face. I don't know if anybody else saw that. His face just looked weird in the picture. Maybe I was looking at something different. I don't know. This was on Telegram. I saw it. A still shot of him on the ground, basically with a knee over him or restrained, and his face looks distorted, strange. And Niall is saying manic. I don't know, is that Niall McConnell or is it just someone else? But either way, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a mannequin. It's like kind of the 9/11 thing to say there were no towers, there was no planes, there or something like that. Obviously there wasn't an animatronic mannequin that was able to run around the place and like stand up and wave their arms around and stuff. But I agree, it looks odd. The face on the floor, it just looks odd. I don't know if anybody has a link to that. I'm kind of getting into details. Let's just watch the video and check it out. But I want to give you first a kind of a background on a brief background on like my thinking about this. In that we've had COVID-19, to remember that happen, and infamously, I have detractors of mine will love to link to this video of me sort of having an argy-bargy at the beginning of COVID. A pub stayed open and the whole country was meant to be shut down. 99% of the country was freaking out about it. Old people are going to die, all the rest of it. And at the time, nationalists, there was this discourse. This is a long story in a way, but like there was a discourse at the time for months before COVID happened we, the right-wing based people online with all the connections and researching stuff, we thought we knew that COVID was real and it was a danger and it was having an impact in China and all the rest of it. And the mainstream denied it. Simon Coveney, sorry, I'm very sinusy and blocked up tonight, apologies, but Simon Coveney, 2 weeks before the lockdown was fully enforced, said that lockdown is a WhatsApp group conspiracy theory and people should be wary of disinformation. And so me and the right-wing populists were saying, no, this is real and it's a threat to our country. And it's a threat to old people or whatever, right? We were saying that because we were placing ourselves in opposition to the mainstream narrative, which seemed logical because, racism, sexism, migrant plantation, whatever, you name it, that's all misinformation, harmful, hateful ideology, the state says. And so Simon Coveney and the rest of them were saying that about COVID. COVID, it's basically not real. There's no big issue. We're okay. There will be no lockdown. Lockdown is a totalitarian conspiracy theory or whatever. We're not doing that. It's not going to happen. And we were saying it is going to happen. And we almost were at the point of saying it should happen or whatever, right? For safety, for this, for that. And I was having discussions with nationalist live streams internationally where we were talking about the possibility of it and that it could put a stick in the spokes of globalism, global migration, global trade, all that kind of stuff. It could be a stick in the spokes of that and an opportunity to return to the shire, to the local, the small, the national, the familiar. And it would kind of purge us of this like terribleness of globalism and mass migration and all of that. And, there could be a bit of more trade locally, a little bit of bringing it closer to home, and the migration would stop. And we were desperate for that. And we thought, you know what, this thing that it could be that in a way. So we're not willing it on, but like if it's it was a straight, we didn't know what to make of it all. But there was this idea that, well, in a way, if it's going to happen anyway, it's not up to us. But like maybe there could be positives out of it. And all this narrative kind of stemmed out of opposition to what the regime were saying. And the regime were fully saying there is no lockdown. That is basically they were saying it's a far right online unhinged conspiracy theory. And so, well, if they're saying that, then the opposite must be reality. And there we go. We took that position. And then there's this, in that initial week or whatever, I'm in Dublin and I always, I'll have interactions, I'll take videos and stuff and post it online. That's kind of what I do. And I was taking a video of this pub, the Temple Bar, one of these pubs, and it had people in it when everywhere else had shut their doors out of solidarity with the old people and all that, but they hadn't. And I thought, oh, what's going on here? I'll take a video and I might post it, I might not. It's basically just relevant. It's whatever. And I wasn't kind of bothering anyone. And then the bouncer started flashing a strobe light in my face and my eyes. I couldn't see, a flashlight straight into my eyes. And I just got annoyed about that because the guy's like harming my eyes basically, right? So I went from kind of being silently kind of like, oh, what's this pub doing? I might post it, I might critique it, I'm COVID brain, whatever, to I was like, I had an argy-bargy with him and I was like, oh, you should be shut down, or like this place shouldn't be open or whatever. And he was like, mind your own business. In hindsight, it's embarrassing because it's like, well, in hindsight, he was right, I was wrong, how, whatever. People like to shove that in my face and say, that's like dirt or something, And I always say, no, I keep it up there because I was wrong. I was wrong. And I know I'm not even ashamed to be, because 99.9% of people were wrong. People in dissident spheres were wrong. People I know now who like to pretend that they were never in on it, I know for a fact they were desperately getting hand sanitizer, toilet roll, and all the rest of it, right? I just, unfortunately, because I'm a public figure and I post videos online and I was taking a video, I didn't want to talk to the guy, I didn't want to make argy-bargy, he did on me, and then I spoke to him, and then I posted it, and so there's a record for me, but there's not for everyone else, right? So I'm hung for it then, where all the post-COVID nationalists can be shown that and show that I'm unreliable, something like that, right? But the reason I mentioned it about now is because it was a teachable moment for me in a sense that, and like I say, not ashamed of it. I don't delete the post. I keep it there on my channel, there to be watched, whatever. Because it's like, I was wrong. There's nothing wrong with being wrong. You can get things wrong. It's a very confusing world. And in the way that it was very understandable to be wrong, right? Like I say, I was putting myself in opposition to what the regime were saying. But then 2 weeks later, lockdown was in effect. So they swapped. So now I don't know where I stand. And how do you gauge what's true? I have the conspiracy theorists are telling me that this is all fake. It's a totalitarian thing. They'll try to jab everyone, whatever. And I spent about a month or two live streaming. That's also on record as well. spending about a month in reasonably good faith, sort of debating with these people online, saying, look, you're saying it's fake, but like, in Bergamo in Italy, the deaths are really high, and this and that. And I was studying it and going, I was saying it is real, I think, right? I don't believe we should be jabbed. I think the lockdown should end sooner rather than later. But like, I think this unhinged reaction to just claim that everything is fake without solid evidence for positively to suggest why it's fake. Like, you don't have positive evidence that it's a conspiracy theory. You can't prove that to me. Therefore, you're temperamentally prone to conspiracy theory, and I actually need evidence, right? This sounds like this is relevant to what I'm speaking about tonight, the stabbing. I said to them, one of my refrains I would always say to them is that, because they would say the bodies in Bergamo were faked. They were fake. It was all fake. And I would say, look, I think that's just a leap too far. I don't know. Can you do that? Like, there's obituaries and this and that. I don't quite get, I think you're losing me now. You're losing the room. I'm the room and you're losing the room. Even though I'm coming in good faith, it's just, you're stretching it now and you're not giving me anything solid. You're just giving me a theory. And what I have to say to them is, I say, is it not possible that, bar any government malfeasance or global government malfeasance, is it not possible that a pandemic could happen? That a deadly, semi-deadly virus thing could spread? It could wipe out a lot of people. Is that not possible? Like, I know it could be a conspiracy, but could it not also be possible? And they would kind of get frustrated. They'd say, well, kind of, yeah, but... So I was questioning the epistemology to say, what is real, what isn't? I sort of believe COVID is real. I'm open-minded, though. I'm in a dissident sphere. I'm open to it, but you're not quite grabbing me on it. And that's the kind of discourse. And I feel like that I'm kind of on the other side of it with this a little bit. And with some other stuff in the last few months as well, I've gone off the rails, let's say, right? And in terms of standard issue 101 nationalist rhetoric. But I learned from that in a way. And there's other things I've learned from as well, which were January 6th, was it? The American storming of the Capitol and all that. I remember that happened, and I posted something along the lines of, yeah, I don't know, would that just be allowed to happen? Just the way it just looks a bit sus to me. It feels like this is just a big honey trap of a sort, right? Just an opportunity to clamp down. Standard conspiracy theorist rhetoric. Problem, reaction, solution. It looks like one thing, it's kind of not. It's a justification for further measures and the rest of it. And it turned out to be exactly kind of that in a way. It might have been partially real, but it was in a large way coordinated, right? FBI agents everywhere. Joe Biden put an iron ring around the White House for the next few years and all of that. And all of the people, anyone who even crossed a little rope, and where the police allowed them in, they were thrown in a dungeon for years, right? So clearly that was right. And I actually tweeted that. That was my initial instinct. I had no evidence one way or another. That was just my instinct. And I posted just, with no evidence. I just say, I get that impression from this. It just looks a bit off to me. And then there was this narrative in nationalist circles like, no, this is great. Don't be counter signaling. Don't be a tinfoil hat, ruining the narrative. And I thought to myself, well, it is kind of based, I suppose, in a way. And I deleted it. And then only a month or two later, it became clear. And I thought, why did I delete that? That was a good record. I was right about that. I mean, I think my instincts were right. Why didn't I just let myself have a hunch and let myself speculate? I didn't say it is fake. I was saying it looks a bit funny, right? Why did I bow to that kind of pressure? Similarly, for October 7th, Israel, I posted something about this looks odd to me, right? Paragliders, motorbikes crossing the most heavily secured kind of border area in the world. No response for ages. I just don't get it. Like, and sure enough, what we have is like genocide in Gaza. Years later, still happening. Iran getting taken out basically in several ways. This like subterfuge and war operation against Iran. Nasrallah getting killed like from 10 stories underground, and the rest of the Hezbollah leadership just get totally wiped out, right? Lebanon, Hezbollah wrecked. Like Israel, like assert hardcore dominance over the region with America, all on the back of this, these hipster festival goers. Some of them got killed in the border with Gaza. And the theory being that they kind of allowed it to happen to justify the further actions that they did. And maybe to the Zionist regime, it would be kind of worth it in a sense, like the classic false flag theory, right? And I'm distracted by chat here. I'm curious, but I had that theory and I kind of deleted it because again, there was some sort of narrative going around, and I thought, yeah, I don't want to be sort of heterodox on this or whatever. So okay, yeah, whatever. I got rid of it. And it's just this kind of, until the COVID and the January 6th and the October 7th, every time you're trying to have a take, you're trying to have the right take, you're believing the opposition of one thing versus another. And, you're looking at things that are unclear. You can take it at face value. You can be skeptical. You can do all these things. And who's to know? Who's to say? And that informs my today. I just kind of like vaguely took a position where I looked at the video of the stabbing of the Garda on Tuesday. This video was released today by Gript, I believe. And I was watching it. I went, oh, well, we have video. I saw someone posted it. I thought, oh, wow, I've seen patchy videos of before and after, and it doesn't really show you anything. No, this seems to be the video. I took one little look at it. I thought, oh, this is it. This is the thing itself, nice and clear. And so I click on it and I watch it. I have another little watch or whatever. And I find myself saying to myself, Gemma O'Doherty, if you're not familiar with her, she's a conspiratorial individual who believes that a lot of stuff is fake, and some people think she's good, some people think she's whatever, right? So Gemma O'Doherty, notorious for calling a lot of things that happen fake, psyops, false flags, and all that. And the criticism of her is that she calls everything that. Nothing is real. It's off the wall. Some people say all that, right? Some people have that view. And anyway, so I watched the video and I find myself chuckling to myself when I go, like, I just take the video at face value. I'm not really overthinking it, really. I'm not even overly concerned about this event one way or the other, which I'll get into. But so with my, like, it's not top of my agenda, let's say. But so I watch it kind of like, flippantly or whatever. And after one or two watches, I tell myself, God, Gemma O'Doherty's going to love this one anyway, kind of chuckling to myself. Not saying, oh, it's fake. I think it's fake. I didn't even entertain that. And I just thought, Gemma O'Doherty will have a field day with this one. She'll love this. And then I start telling myself, why would she have a field day? And I kind of go, because I suppose, and this is me thinking it's real, not actually questioning myself. I just go, well, I suppose she would love it because it looks so strange. There's so many, it's just strange. And then I go, let me watch it again. And I watch it again. And I start kind of analyzing it to myself. And I go, and this is what I tweeted earlier. I tweeted my exact thoughts. I didn't think about it. I didn't think what's the appropriate take, what are people going to like or not like, or any of that, or what's going to piss who off. Don't care, right? But I just go, this is my feeling on it, and I don't want to say what I don't mean. I'll say what I mean, and I won't say what I don't mean, and I'll be sincere. I said, before anyone gets defensive or emotional, I'm not saying this is fake or staged. That would be a baseless conspiracy theory. It's probably real. I'm just saying it looks very staged, right? And people got, some people agreed. A lot of other people got really pissed off, really, just like I said, defensive and emotional, right? And angry, effectively, right? And I thought, well, I think I'm being clear. It might sound like I'm gaslighting and being kind of coy, but realistically, I think it's clear. I'm saying I'm not saying it is fake and staged. I don't know. I mean, Occam's razor would suggest it just is what it is. It would be a baseless conspiracy theory to say it is fake, it is staged. What basis do I have? What evidence do I have for that, right? I could not say that. I say it's probably real. It probably is real. I'll say that now. Possibility, probability, likelihood, all those words, right? These words matter. I said it's probably real, right? That's all I could justifiably say, really, right? If we're being reasonable people. And I just said, I'm just saying it looks very staged. Maybe I should have said it looks a bit staged. Maybe very is strong. It looks somewhat, very, a bit, whatever. It looks staged is what I'm saying, right? And Yeah, people got very angry. So you're saying it's staged, like you're jumping to this, you're jumping to that, and I'm kind of thinking, well, I mean, I do kind of tend to choose my words pretty carefully. Like, um, I'm saying it just looks staged. It looks like for someone like Gemma or someone who's prone to believe that most of these events are fake, even if you totally disagree. I disagree with that, right? But so even if you're a Gemma skeptic or someone like that, you look at it and you go, "This video is real. I am 100% committed to the fact that it's real." You could still go, "It does have a fake look to it. This real video has the look of a false flag." Someone who erroneously believes it to be a false flag, the elements that they would need to spin this narrative are, in fairness, there, right? And that's kind of what I'm saying. And that's not all I'm saying. I believe it. Maybe I don't know what I quite believe, and that's the thing, right? Like that's why I mentioned previous events and my view on epistemology and politics and big things we don't understand, subterfuge and state events and all that. The answer to this is agnosticism. Agnosticism would have probably it's Occam's razor. It is what it is. But if there's even a possibility, of course, it's okay to entertain that. Like I said to someone earlier, I can walk and chew gum at the same time, right? I can say, as many people would like me to, or as we're all meant to, I could say it's an Islamic terrorist. He shouted Allah Akbar. The media cover it up because they're woke. The guards facilitated the plantation, and here they are. Hopefully now they'll learn in a way. Wish the Garda well from his injuries, and migration is out of control. And I'm right. I'm totally vindicated by this. This is one of those things. I'm not happy someone was injured, but I mean, there is not a glee, but like a certain vindication people have when these things happen, right? Right wing people. I could say all that, right? And if I'm to say that, and that's all well and good, that could and probably is the case and all good. But if someone wants me to come on and say that, strictly only say that, not look at it any other way, right? Well, then I might as well get this mannequin Niall was talking about and put a little voice AI box in the back of its head and plonk it up here on the chair, go live and press, go, right? And it can tell you all that. And that's all well and good. And it might be accurate too. But, need I say that for the 5 millionth time, right? Yeah, migration's out of control. We have all sorts of lunatics here now, unvetted men, Islamic radicalism, perhaps, mentally ill people from all sorts of backgrounds, criminals from the Balkans or from Albania and Georgia and the world's trash, right? Ejected from their own countries by their governments to soft touch art, all that, blah blah blah. I could do that, or I could entertain other ideas as well on top of that. Or we can say, no, it has to be the narrative. We have to react a certain way, and this is what we have to say, or else you're a traitor to the nationalist revolution because you're wrecking the buzz, right? That's what the response I get from a lot of people. And it's like, well, it sounds like a meme. It does sound like a meme, but it's like, I am just asking questions, right? I am speculating. Are we allowed to do that or not, right? I'm not saying that someone who takes it for what it is a terrible dumbass or no, like that's fine. Like, I mean, probably true, probably is just what it is. But in a world of COVID, which, like I say, I initially, like most people, got wrong, which 2 weeks before it was a borderline far right WhatsApp conspiracy theory. 2 weeks later it was lockdown, and you were a far right tinfoil hat to deny it or something, right? In a world like that, in a world of algorithm adjustments and all that, like this incentive stuff to like melt people's brains, I think the onus is on us to not believe everything is fake, to believe everything is real, or this, that, or the other, but to say sometimes there's a going narrative and we can all run for the door. And sometimes, perhaps you could also say, well, I don't know. Let's think about it a little bit. Let's wait and see. Let's examine other possibilities. Let's do this and that. And what I notice online, similar to a lot of similar accounts as well, not all, to when I question the, let's say, this anti-Shia demo in Dublin. If you haven't seen that, I think I made my case strong enough. And the Zionist flags and the Israeli influence and the, what's it called? Skynet or whatever it is. I've forgotten the name of it already. The satellite CIA company that some right-wing people are associated to in Ireland, connected to the CIA former directors. And, I told that whole narrative, and it's pretty decently solid, I believe. Or at least I explored that idea. And no, it's not Palantir, it's another one. It's sorry, it's I just can't think of the name. It's someone's going to know the one I'm talking about, right? It's related to Palantir. Peter Thiel is an investor in the company I'm talking about, but it's got strong connections to the conservative right-wing Irish, call it mainstream media. Someone's going to know. It doesn't matter. But what I mean to say is, when I've been carrying that cross for the last couple of months, right? Nobody else wanted to. And I had a lot of the same accounts, or just the same thing, where I'm being attacked. Attacked is a strong word, right? In the online sense. I have people saying I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other. He's a spy. What is it? He's an alcoholic, because I drink a tiny whiskey on my streams, right? He needs to lay off the whiskey. I think before I mentioned one time that I had to take painkillers, and someone said he needs to lay off the pain medicines. And what else? He's the other one I got today a lot, multiple times, was he's doing it for clicks, right? He's doing this for clicks. He's saying that this was staged. I didn't say it was staged. I said, let's open the possibility here. Let's think about it. He's saying it was staged. He's stirring the pot intentionally, knowingly. He doesn't believe it. He knowingly is doing this, and the reason he's doing it is for clicks. So if he gets clicks, he gets X revenue, which is fuck all, right? Like the amount of costs, never mind, but that's ridiculous. He's doing it for clicks. Now, if I was doing it for clicks, says as I get some big, it looks like a big donation, but it's a foreign currency, so I don't know what SEK. Anyway, thank you. We'll read super chats in a while. Appreciate it for that. But what I mean to say is, if I was doing it for clicks, I would post a picture of the Irish volleyball team jiggling around the place and say, this is the Ireland we stand to lose because the Muslims are taking over, right? And the algorithm would throw me 20,000 likes, no bother, right? That's what I would do if I was click searching, right? All due respect to anybody who does that, play the game, do the thing, whatever. But like, ridiculous, right? So he's doing it for clicks. He's a pain medicine addict. He takes pain medicine for a bad back. I don't have a bad back. He's a leftist. He's a Muslim sympathizer. He's a Palestinian, whatever. All this kind of sort of rubbish, right? Which I've never experienced, or rarely. The last time I ever experienced that kind of stuff, and I don't care, it doesn't bother me. But what I mean to say, just on a technical observation level, the last time I experienced that stuff was when Antifa were very strong up until about 2020, which is when they kind of started to wear out a bit. But when Antifa were at their peak, you would get this constantly, right? This kind of like aggressive, personal, baseless, all that kind of stuff would come at you. And I get the same thing again out of this. And I just, I recognize it for what it is. It's like, well, the question is, what is that? Like, are we allowed to think, or are we all just right-wing robot nationalist? We react exactly this way to that stuff, and we say exactly this about that, and that's how it is. And anybody who questions it, even like fairly mildly, like, is some sort of terrible person who needs to be attacked in all sorts, not just on the idea, but like, attacked across the board sort of thing. So that's my premise for that. It is like, it's not even about a question of, is this video about the guard getting stabbed, is it some sort of psyop false flag? Or is it legitimate and it's a cause for alarm and a vindication on the migrant Islamic question, all that? Is it? That's a question. But there's a broader question about the extent to which the right-wing nationalist scene has become so doctrinaire and so sort of, if it's not being psyoped, it's ripe. It's sitting there asking to be psyoped, right? You know what I mean? It's so predictable and so hair triggering that if there were Machiavellian forces, which of course there are, right? And if there were Machiavellian observable forces who have predictable interests and predictable means and predictable motives and all that, if they existed, which they do, they would in the grassroots, the lower level right wing, online and offline space, find the most ripe and defenseless target for manipulation and for directing and for effectively almost MK ultraing. I use that phrase sort of loosely because it's just so easy, because nobody's questioning anything. People are questioning the liberal dogma. So the leftists are NGO victims, and they don't know what's going on, and they fall for this and they believe that. But I never would. There's no reflection. There's no, like, even when you say to people in general, and I know I'm going off the rails here, I'm crazy and all that, but you know, like when I was talking about the Israel Zionism thing within the Irish right wing, I was saying, look, this looks like a sort of a CIA, Mossad, Atlanticist MI5 NGO Radio Free Europe style, Hong Kong umbrella protest style color revolution, effectively. And I'm part of this movement, and most people in it are sincere and good and all that. But of course, and I've explained previously how it works. Most people aren't nefarious; they're not knowing. It's strings are sort of pulled, things are directed in various ways, and suddenly you're sort of being used to an end, etc. And you're kind of like this agent within a country as a political entity. And more often than not, said entity does have justifiable crimes against the state. That's, of course, who these Machiavellian operators tend to ventriloquize, because, of course, you're taking a people with a passionate, legitimate grievance against a state that is working against them, so you can work with that. I was suggesting that that's the case. And anyway, the idea that the right wing is very like that. And sorry, I've found my point, right? Which is that I was saying it could be like a sort of a version of that color revolution, a kind of Maidan, but it's not militant to that extent. You know, somewhere between Pussy Riot and Umbrella thing and this and that and the other, right? Or just even the LGBT movement in the West, in like up until a few years ago, there was like a period of about 15 years there where that was clearly, and it's used in Eastern Europe and it's used everywhere, right? And like right-wing populists will say, oh, yeah, totally. But then sort of have this breakdown when you say, now, is it possible that that could happen to us? You know, could right-wing nationalism, populism, counter-state stuff be sort of targeted for that usage by the same entity, basically, right? The Atlantis. Like, first off, you discover who are we ruled by? We're not actually ruled by knife-wielding insane Muslims or migrants or like a fat African woman walking down the street naked in Athlone on a Tuesday morning. Like, say what you want about all that. A lot of that is very lamentable and alarming for our country and our safety, etc. But that's not the sovereign and the hegemon we're ruled by. Are we ruled by Micheál Martin and Simon Harris and Leo DeLeek and all that? No, right? So who are we ran by? We're ran by this Atlanticist, heavily Zionist sort of entity, pan-Western, pan-Europe. It's American-based, Zionist characterized and kind of ran, and it's British as well, and that's why the loyalism thing is relevant. I know I'm kind of going off here, but you know, that's the sovereign that we don't live under Iran or Muslim rule, and we don't live under a liberal girl in a college who thinks we should be nice to everybody, or you know, we don't actually. Those things are at play, but they are not the sovereign, the hegemon that we live under, right? So first you identify the sovereign, the hegemon, then you go, what are their interests? What's going on? What do we see? Would we be of use to them? In what way would we be a use to them, perhaps given their means, motive, interests? And do we see something like that happening? Do things seem a bit off? And you discern things, right? But I'm kind of revising or going over previous stuff, but my point is to say you suggest that to a right wing person, and you don't have, there's no such thing as evidence with this kind of opaque stuff, but you give pretty good grounds, at least in theory, to suggest that these things are possible, right? And they kind of can't entertain it. They go, no, 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 we are the keepers of the independent and true ideas, the counter state, the counter regime ideas. Therefore, we couldn't be that, or even partially. I that would be the left, that would be whatever. And then you say, well, like, I mean, of the 50 odd regime change operations the US has carried out over since World War II, probably many more political influence ops, along with Britain and Israel and others. I would wager the majority of them have been right-wing nationalists, Pinochet and this and that and the other. The maybe one of the original ones was Korea, the anti-communist crusade, right? Tens of thousands of people died, Jeju Island massacre, you name it, right? The amount of assassinations and overthrows and coups that have happened there, mostly a right-wing counter-communist, this and that and the other. We've all seen the Japanese guy with the sword and through the politician. Like, it's actually not that crazy, is my point. And it's like, I would hate to be the person who critiques the NGOs, critiques the so-called left, critiques the regime, critiques the normies, all that, and then fails to kind of apply like appropriate self-scrutiny, right, to the thing that I'm in. I would hate to be the bug in the jar. I would really not want that. And of course, that's not healthy, right? You're not going anywhere good if you're sort of not clear, and if you're not thinking, if you're not independent. So that's why I suggest we don't turn around and eat ourselves. We don't say everything is fake and we're all a bunch of color revolution idiots and let's all go home. No, but if all this stuff has general grounds for skepticism, then as things are happening, we must exercise maybe a little bit of caution, right? And that brings me to opening this video up today, seeing it and going, okay, it is what it is, saying, oh, Gemma would love this. And then thinking, well, why would she love it? Why do I think she would love it? Why did that thought cross my mind? Because it actually does come across as a little bit just strange, right? And if it is a bit strange, why is that? Someone says it all has, Paddy Murphy says it all has so many layers to it. Yeah, that's the fear, is that it's so demoralizing, too much to think about and all that. It's like, look, no, we do have migrants. O'Connell Street is all non-Irish. We have Indians, like I said last night, in Trojan elephants marching down O'Connell Street. We have this, that, and the other. Yes, we have Muslims and the rest of it. We have the break. There's all these like face value things that are totally real and sort of uncontroversial, and our grounds and our causes legitimate. I'm only talking about on the edge, on the vanguard. Must we sort of? I don't think everybody should be talking like me, right? That's the thing. I'm sort of taking it upon myself a little bit to do what I don't see anybody else doing, right? So it doesn't have to be thoroughly confusing or demoralizing. It's just something to keep an eye on. And once in a while, have a little think about. And again, because everybody was like, oh, look, it's a Muslim, it's a Garda, it's a this, it's a that, blah, blah, blah. I thought, look, nobody else is kind of putting this forward. To me, it does look a bit off. It probably is real, but I'll just put it out there as such. I won't come out and say it is fake. I'll say, look, it probably is real, but it does certainly look off, right? So I'll say it, and it'll just add to the discourse, and that's it, right? But of course, then all the vitriol, and the vitriol itself to me is also a little bit sus as well, right? But because why be vitriolic? Why don't you disagree? If you think different, work away, no bother, right? But anyway, I'm looking at it thinking it looks a bit off, and then it sets me thinking. I go, well, I have had these questions lately, and to be honest, I have been thinking, like a lot of commentators, American, British, and others have said, with all this Israel, Atlanticist stuff going on, this big crackdown on elements of the left, they're sort of empowering the right to crush this kind of Palestine left, and there's various different reasons for that, playing the two sides against each other. And again, the thing is like, okay, so these big forces we know are controlling NGOs on the left, and they're transatlantic and multinational, like, so they only control the left, and they don't control, or they don't at least take interest in what the right are saying and see what they can do with us, right? It's like, of course they do, right? When the time suits. And the basic theory as well, that like it's hard to explain, right? It's like, say I'm so convinced that I'm right and I have the secret recipe about what the state is really doing and all the rest of it. And we all do, because we all see population replacement and we see this, and we see that, and the breakdown of the home and whatever. It's sort of like not giving the Machiavellian regime enough credit. That, do you really think they're too dumb to not know exactly what you know and to see exactly how you see it from your perspective, and to be able to sort of digest that and understand it? Like, they're not dumbasses. You're not talking about the 19-year-old Trinners girl, right? Waving a rainbow flag. These are smart people, right? Smarter perhaps than you or me, right? You know, that type of way. You have to have the humility. They fully understand what we see, and they get it from our perspective. They know exactly how we would react to something, how we would feel about something, what sort of reaction we would have, who we would blame, who we would this, who we would that. That is true. And I don't mean to make everything seem fake and tinfoil hat, but like, if it's true for the left, have the humility to understand that, hey, you're not that smart, right? That you see these obvious things that are happening in our society. Yeah, we see it, like, but they see that we see it too, quite obviously. So that's more background to how I look at this video and the stuff I've been talking about in recent months. And like I said, various commentators of like mind to me and others have said that, like, I'm not saying 9/11, I'm not wading into that, but people say, various other things, the Gulf of Tonkin, I think it is, various confirmed events in the past, various types of false flags, loads of it, right? Stuff at the time you would never have believed. Oh, that's not possible. They wouldn't do that or whatever. Were in fact the case, right? And so a lot of people have said, with all this Israel stuff going on, this counterbalancing of the right, populist right, against this kind of Palestine left and populist left or whatever, that pot is being stirred. I think that's just fair to anybody who doesn't know that. I don't know what to tell you, but that part of that sort of operation, which is obviously clear, they're also trying to prevent a melding of left and right, where the good ideas from the left and the good ideas from the right kind of meet in the middle, this kind of cross-pollination, trying to kind of drive the wedge, like drive the right off so off in one direction on certain matters and make it incompatible. There's a lot going on that way, in my view. And part of that, anyway, a lot of it does center around the Palestine question. People have said it's clearly happening. It's only a matter of time until, some mass casualty event in America and it's a Palestine flag waver and it's a Muslim. Maybe that could be real, but let's be real. Historically, you could see that they would have an interest in creating things like that to kind of put the icing on the cake. And it is possible. I know it's speculative and I know it's out there. But a lot of people have said that, I wouldn't be shocked to wake up to something like that. And it could be real, or given the context of the world right now, if and when something like that happens, I think the onus would be on us not to immediately believe it's conspiracy theory, but to at least avoid the initial headfirst predictable, here's what my reaction is supposed to be, dive in, and maybe to examine the event and to sort of stop for a second, right? And someone could say that's bullshit, like what a Muslim might do in attack. And yeah, totally, right? Might do and probably will do and all this and could be organic. But given that there's multiple possibilities at play, we don't immediately, excuse me, we don't immediately believe the conspiracy theory. We just keep an open mind for a second and don't do the MK Ultra rush in with the 1, 2, 3 reaction, right? I don't know if I have you so far, but to me that seems reasonable. That's how I would come into something like this. And so I open this video, I look at it, and then I think Gemma would love this, and then I go, why? Because it does come off a bit funny, even though it's probably real. And then I start to examine it and go, with everything I've just said to you, it's so out there. Would it really be fake? Like I never thought I'd be believing that kind of stuff. I don't want to do that. And I mean, this proves that migration is out of control and all the rest, and the narrative is juicy, and so maybe I'll just take my idea that hey, it does just look a bit funky. I'm not saying it is, but it kind of does look that way. Maybe I'll just, for expedience and for whatever, just keep that to myself and leave it. But I just have a funny feeling about that. I'm going, no, 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 no. I mean, I need to examine this. Do you know what? Nobody else is really doing it. Nobody close to me, anyway. So I suppose I'll keep an open mind and explore it. And anyway, so that brings us to the video itself. I'm just giving you the background that I don't just wake up and say everything's fake, or, deny the Occam's razor approach and say, no, we'll start from the premise that it's fake just for no reason. There's background, there's wider context, there's intellectual reasons, for various reasons, to kind of say, do you know what? Okay, we're getting into the skeptical seat, but not for no reason, right? And it could totally be real. Like I say, it probably is. I don't know, right? So let's just look at the video and just have a gander at it. There's no harm in that, right? Nobody's getting hurt. Are you with me so far? See, here's someone, again, I'm talking to, like, no offense to Anons. I love Anons, right? But someone says, no offense, Garrod, but the meme of the bell curve, low IQ, midwit, intellectual comes to mind. So that's meant to be an insult, right? Or whatever, or like an observational insult. That I think you're like a dumbass or whatever for saying this, right? Now, someone could say I'm unhinged, I have an emotional reaction, I'm trying to be contrarian, I'm this, I'm that. Someone could say I'm doing it for clicks. I don't know. Let's just say, right? Someone could say I'm wedded to the idea of Jews and Zionists being the outgroup. I could explore the various critiques or whatever, right? But I don't think anyone would accuse me in my critique or just my general person of, oh yeah, that comes across as a really dumb person, right? There's dumb people out there, right? There's people who are unintelligent. I suppose he's saying that, is he saying that I'm on the smart end of the bell curve and I don't get it? So I'm too smart. Well, that's a more fair critique now that I think about it. I'm too smart to get what's going on, or else I'm too dumb to get. That's the bell curve, right? But if you're the Chad midwit, then you can see it for what it really is, which is a Muslim, and the guards are victimized and all the rest of it. I mean, no, I know, yeah, no. See, that's the thing. I don't quite know. Am I the midwit? Am I the genius who just doesn't get it? Oh yeah, so it's the other way around. Okay, so the dumbass and the smart people get it. The midwit doesn't get it, right? So, yeah. Again, it's just absurd, right? Because, like, so the bottom end, the low end of the bell curve would take this for what it is, right? Obviously, and somehow the really smart one sees it for what it is, but only a midwit could come up with. See, that's the problem I have with it, right? See, maybe I am the low end of the bell curve. I took a second to kind of wrap my head around the insult, right? Maybe I could be accused of being conspiratorial, but is this really a midwit take? That's my point. Is like this, like, I could be a lot of things, but it's not like low cognition to, even if I'm wrong, it's not it's not a problem of like lukewarm cognition to the lukewarm cognition people go, just say, oh, Muslims and this and that and foreigners and whatever. I mean, let's be fair, that is the midwit reaction. It might be correct. Maybe the event is what it seems to be. And I'm just entertaining a theory for the sake of it or whatever. But certainly, right or wrong, the midwit take is just to take this for what it is. Anyway, so yeah, suffice to say. But it's a lot of that stuff. It's a lot of like, and that's what I'm saying. I recognize there's something in it that I recognize. This kind of like, so something like, you're a midwit, you're in it for clicks, you're I don't know, an alcoholic because you drank a whiskey on your stream, or all this kind of stuff. I find myself going, I hear a lot of, it's like the lady doth protest too much a little bit, like, why so sensitive? It almost, in a sense, call me a paranoid lunatic, right? paranoid, whiskey drinking, alcoholic lunatic in it for clicks. But you know, it's a bit sus. Like I posted this just kind of entertaining it, you know, sincerely, and then the reaction to me kind of went, "Oh, I'm getting a little bit of when I was criticizing Israel, and people call me a Muslim sympathizer or Hamas lefty or whatever, and who is oh, I have the file on him, and he's this and he's that and whatever else." I'm getting that allergic reaction, and I've always been, since dealing with Antifa back in the day, I'm funny about that reaction. And not that any individual comment I'm sensitive about being called this, that, or the other. I just recognize it as a little bit suspicious, right? Why not? Like, why not? People have different views and say, oh, I think you're wrong on that. I don't know about that. I see where you're coming from. Like, surely a critic could at least see where I'm coming from. Am I that off the wall that there's not even a hint of logic there, right? Surely a good faith critic would at least say, oh, I kind of see where you're coming from. I granted this, granted that, but I disagree. Only a bad faith spam bot place would dive straight into the most sort of like gutter kind of insults and stuff like that. And it's the pervasiveness of it that has me suspicious as well. Anyway, I had to wrap my midwit brain around the bell curve meme there, so apologies for that. But anyway, let's have a look at the video in question, right? Which is probably just is what it is, right? Let's just examine from the Gemma O'Doherty. She actually wrote an article on it. She's skeptical. A lot of people believe she's way too skeptical of everything. But just let's say from the Gemoid perspective, if you're entertaining it, let's see which bits the unhinged, not to call Gem unhinged. I know she's litigious. I would never suggest such a thing. I have no comment on her at all, right? But someone else who is unhinged, who would take a conspiratorial position, let's examine what they would have false grounds, but understandable, to kind of raise questions about this. We begin with shot, right? Oh, I have a compliment here to balance out my butt hurt, as Americans call it, about people insulting me. I've been watching you for at least 5 years. I think you're spot on, totally balanced view. Love that, right? Thank you. But you know, let's start with the video itself, right? From this unhinged perspective. First off, we have the shot. The event happens center stage here, right? I'm already using loaded language. The event happened center stage. This event that was probably like just a face value is what it is. Actually, do you know what? For those who haven't seen it, I won't comment. I'll just watch it for what it is. We'll do 2 runs of it.
Así eres tú, porque trabajamos juntos, porque te conozco mucho tiempo, como que un año.
Trae un cuchillo, ¿no? Haz para atrás. Bate. Kick that.
So I'm just monitoring the chat there, and someone says Vingul says, I don't know, unimpressive scene, but real life isn't an action movie, right? Again, it comes back to, and I don't mean to stress the point, but it comes back to the kind of thing of like, I don't know, I lean towards it's legit or whatever. You have to give credence to that, I mean, if you're agnostic and you just don't know, then you I suppose you have to just lean to take it for what's in front of you. So that's where I stand, realistically. It's just basically like a form of critical thinking, like a debate club or whatever. It's like let's for a genuine reason, let's examine it. The whole thing of like, if someone says, I don't know, I think it's fake, I don't know, I think it's real, I think it looks a bit real, or I think it kind of looks fake, but I think it's real. We are all speculating, and people could have reasons to lean one way or another, and for the majority you have to just conclude that it's real, right? In general. So, because I could say, well, I've seen things too, and this aspect doesn't look real. It's all up in the air. We're just going over it. What I would say specifically to that is not everything is Hollywood. What I would say is I was raised in the era of the freewheeling internet, right? I'm 34. I was, 12 when the internet was the Wild West, like you couldn't believe. I'm not a sicko. I'm not a macabre person who watches gore videos around the clock or whatever. But between X, where you see various crimes and violence happening, and between all sorts of eras of the internet we've had, I've seen my fair share of videos of unfortunate, nasty things happening, street violence, this, that, the other, whatever, right? Fights, you name it. So the repertoire to which I'm going to, in terms of my intuition, isn't the Bourne Identity. It's not. I've seen Hollywood films, but what I'm referring to is plenty of videos I've seen on X, plenty of videos I've seen here and there, and of various very legit street violence, murders, fights, this, that, the other, on gritty, grimy streets in Ireland, in London, in New York, everywhere, right? Germany, you name it, further afield. So I've seen plenty real, plenty indisputably real, right? So it's like, I just feel like that critique is like, well, yeah, I'm not comparing it to a Hollywood movie. I'm comparing it to reality, and also I've seen things in real life, right? It happened in front of me here and there. So the looks on people's faces, the reactions, and this is all subjective. The reactions, the sort of the general sound on the street, the yelps, the reactions, all these sort of sensory kind of small things, right? To me, don't really fly on this. It feels like there's just this kind of ethereal lack of something there. You can kind of put your finger on it in certain ways, but overall, it's just a general sense of like, compared to real things I've seen, it just feels a little bit weird. And that's not evidence of anything, obviously, by itself. None of it is hardcore evidence of anything. I'm just saying, as a general thing, it still doesn't match scenes that I've come across before. So we start with the obvious, right? The camera shot, right? Everybody loved when I dissected the guy who put up the Roman salute in front of Google back in the day, and I suggested that he was connected to NGO people, possibly. And at the time I said, I don't know. I'm just showing you what's here. Let's break it down. I have no evidence. There is no way to know, but let's just look at it for what it is. I'll tell you what I see. You can disagree with me and make your own conclusion. And a lot of people concluded, yeah, that does look sus. I never had evidence. I never could suggest it definitely was this or that. It was a theory. And that was grand. So it's kind of like, well, it's actually, and this is more tenuous than that, way more tenuous. But like, if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander type of thing. We're just having a look. So we start with the shot, right? So the camera is fairly fixed. I don't know if they move in a while, but as it stands, it's not shaky. It's nice and fixed on that street. And I know I start to sound crazy here, but bear with me. I'm just giving the standard conspiratorial take. Let's just take it for what it is. The shot is set up perfectly. As you saw previously, the guard gets stabbed right here, literally center shot, right? And it's fixed. Now, this woman, she's speaking Brazilian, Italian, I don't know, but she seems to be talking crossways I don't know, is she talking to the camera person? Is she talking to someone here? Either way, what a believer in the mainstream narrative about this would say is that, look, it's 2025. People have cameras out. People take videos. People take Snapchats. They take TikToks. They take a video to send their family, whatever, right? Like, you cannot just say there's something conspiratorial about it just because that. Sure. But while that might be the case, you don't go to a cafe or a bar and there's, let's say, a dozen people sitting outside it at any given time. Picture you're sitting there having a drink, right? At any given time, perhaps one person has their phone out taking a video, maybe, and maybe even not, right? So my point is, it's not that pervasive, right? That everyone has a camera out all the time in all directions, pointed every direction, right? That's actually not the case, right? Sometimes, right? Sometimes not. You're at a bar, sitting outside having a drink. Maybe one person is taking a video, probably not even that, but there might be one. If they're taking a video, they're probably taking a video of something, right? They're taking a video of their friend, they're taking a selfie video, they're taking a picture of a flock of birds, you name it, right? They're taking a video of something. And in this case, they might just be taking a video of the street. They might be recording this woman for some reason from a sideways perspective where she's not even engaging with the camera. I don't quite know. They might just be idly taking a video. Those things might be the case, and someone might be taking a video pointed in some direction, obviously, right? But a critic can reasonably say, well, it is a bit odd though, right? I mean, the stabbing takes place, and this is pointed clear in decent enough definition directly at where the guy gets stabbed. That's not evidence of anything, right? But it's something, right? That's all I'm saying. It is something straight away. It's a bit like, that is a bit odd. Perfect, right? This footage that found its way to Gript after 2 days. I don't know. But so it's extremely perfect, right? Usually when there's a video taken, so let's say someone's taking a picture of a big Irish wolfhound goes by. You're taking a video of it. You're taking a video of your friend to send to your other friend, whatever, right? Taking a video. Next thing, a bedlam breaks out to the left. There's a car crash. There's a stabbing, whatever, right? Ordinarily, of course, the person has their camera. They're taking the video, and then the spontaneous thing that they could not have predicted usually wouldn't happen to be center crosshairs of their shot, right? Logically. So usually they'll be taking the video, they might be zoomed in on their friend, and next thing they're zooming out, they're whipping around, it's flying around the place, and then their instinct is to point it at the subject matter, right? If they're not too panicked, they will do that. And so it's blurry, it's chaotic, but then eventually they settle on the scene and you kind of get it, and people give out, they say, oh, could the camera person not have done a bit better? Because they end up kind of missing a little bit and that kind of stuff. But in this case, no, that's not the case. It's in advance, it's pointed square at where it happens. And it's fair to say, just unclear logically, what exactly was the person taking a video of? There might have been a reason. They might have been taking a video of this woman. I don't know. But as we see it, you have to say, well, evidence of nothing. That would be unhinged to say that's evidence of a whole psyop, right? But just on its own, you go, well, as an individual little detail, it is kind of odd. You go, that is kind of odd. I mean, what are the chances of that? What were they taking a video of? And does everyone really have a video rolling in every direction all the time? Are we that phone oriented? Well, yeah, people take videos, but again, this is an exceptional coincidence, we'll say, right? Fair to say. So
así eres tú, porque trabajamos juntos, porque te conozco mucho tiempo, como que un año.
Okay, so next what I have is that the Muslim terrorist or whatever it is, right? And I don't know, of course, I'm alleging, I don't know anything about it, speculation, but the man, the assailant, the stabber, he is unhinged, right? Let's say this is the narrative. He's an unhinged Muslim migrant, mentally ill, something along those lines, right? He is overtaken by either Islamic doctrine or mental illness and PTSD, you name it, right? That's what's going on in his head. That's his world, right? And, or no, before we even get to that, right? The guards are strolling along. The man is following, sorry, let me backtrack. The guards are strolling along very casually. They're not looking around. The woman here in the foreground, she does not seem to be, if there had been some fracas, and as of yet, I don't think anybody knows any information on this, but the question is, what was happening preceding this video, if anything? Was my immediate reaction, others too. Into this nice frame, what was going on before that? Because the guards are walking along, they seem to have no concern or vigilance, right? Or we just had to deal with this aggressive guy. He was trying to steal from a shop. He was taking a piss on the street. We had to reprimand him, and then we had a stern word with him. He gave out to us, and we told him to watch his mouth and go home. And now we're walking away, or something like that. They don't seem to be demonstrating any kind of like, make sure, because guards will always tell you, leave the area now, walk away, right? And they'll kind of watch you walk away. I've had many interactions with them at protests and the rest of it, right? They'll tell you to walk away, and they'll watch you. They'll have you walk away in front of them, walk away, and with good reason, actually. That, I imagine that would be Garda training. It would make sense, right? Make sure the person is gone from your view nice and clearly before you kind of turn your back, right? Anyone would know that, even a civilian, but certainly a guard. So had there been some big fracas recently to this, preceding this, you wouldn't imagine that they're just strolling along, not looking. The woman in the foreground doesn't seem to be, like, if there had been a little scene, everybody loves a scene, rubbernecking. If there had been a scene where, I saw the guards talking to him, and then they told him to walk up the road, but I saw him, once the guards turned around again, I saw him spin back, and he's making his way back. I could see him marching down, looking all angry. Of course, the woman sitting there would be like, sort of losing her train of thought, like looking, going, whoa, what's going on here? He's coming back or whatever. She seems to be completely oblivious to any scene, as do they. That's the question. What happened before this? It doesn't almost look like anything. Not that anybody here is aware of, anyway. So that's just kind of odd. And someone said to me on Twitter, events and fights and violence usually starts like this. You're not a street guy like me. I'll tell you that's how it works. It's not Hollywood or whatever, right? And I kind of went, really though? No. I have to stop. Hold on a sec now. No, almost always. Of course, there's random stabbings, Muslim stabbings. To be fair, right? Some things happen randomly, random violence, but almost always. Of course, there's some lead up. A guy squares up to you. A guy looks shifty in the corner. He wants something from you. There's a dispute. There's a previous issue. There's something. There's some sort of, actually is some sort of build-up. They're not always. Clearly, in this case, not. But just generally speaking, of course, you do expect a build-up. Here, there seems to be like nothing, right? And into this shot, anyway, comes the guy and stabs, right? And let me get back to where I previously was. He's an unhinged migrant PTSD person, a mentally ill convict psycho, right, who escaped from a prison in Algeria or something, Pakistan, speculatively, right? Like, let's say, or he's trying to take over the world for Islam or whatever it is, right? Either way, he's trying to slay the kafir, whatever the theory might be. That's his motivation, and he is, in his own twisted way, pure of heart, determined. He knows what he's doing. I'm not saying he's pure of heart, but you get what I mean. He is committed to what he's doing. He is full of fervor, full of mental illness, whatever it is. He's running in and he's doing this unspeakable, outlandish thing, but he's committed, right? I mean, you're going to stab a guard, right? I mean, even if you unsuccessfully stab a guard, you're going away for a long time. That's clearly a very serious thing to do, legally, morally, physically, very serious thing to do, right? So he's coming in with all this fervor if he's wielding a knife at a guard, again, if you're in it, in for a penny, in for a pound type of thing, right? I condemn all of this, obviously. I don't want to be misinterpreted, but what I mean is, from this person's unhinged, evil perspective, in for a penny, in for a pound. If you be doing it, you're doing it, right? He's taking a knife to a guard from behind. I mean, you have to assume he's trying to kill the guard. If not, then what? So you just have to assume he's trying to kill or seriously injure the guard. Why else do you stab someone? Let's just put it that way, right? And he chooses to stab the guard in the stab vest. Again, to suggest that that's evidence of a false flag would be unhinged and reckless, right? And I would never say such a thing. On its own, nuts, right? But on the other hand, just as an individual observation, is that not odd, strange, right? He's trying to murder or seriously injure this guard, and he stabs him in a stab vest. Of all places to stab an individual, right? To stab them in a stab resistant vest. That's what it's there for, right? And it only covers a minority of this man's body, right? This guard's body, fortunately, right? Or fortunately it protected him, and we say prayers and all that, right? But the majority of the guard's body is indeed exposed, not covered by a stab proof vest, a knife resistant vest, right? His legs, his arms, and I'm not making suggestions, but just from an unhinged evil murderer's point of view, right? Who's trying to kill or seriously maim, he runs up on these two guards. These two guards, right up until even after the guard takes the first couple of stabs, is almost unsuspecting. Like the guard takes one or two swipes and he still hasn't physically reacted. He's still turning around. So that tells us that this man had carte blanche, right? He could have, fortunately he didn't, right? But he could have, he had the capacity to, from behind that guard, because the guard is so unsuspecting, he could have basically ran up behind that guard and picked a 1 centimeter square point on that guard's neck, and at his leisure, effectively, without even being wild in swings, he could have at his leisure, borderline slowly, just plunged the knife into that spot, straight through the guard's neck, right? Thank God he didn't, right? But what I'm saying is that he could have done that. He's trying to kill or seriously maim the guard. He had an open field, carte blanche. He could have gone for the neck. He could have gone for the legs. He could have gone anywhere, really, right? And he went for what looks like, almost borderline carefully, the vest. Now, I'm glad he did, but if you're trying to kill or maim someone, the thing is luminous yellow, right? It's very easy to see. It's not a concealed vest. It wasn't under an overcoat. You're a man with a knife who's taking this huge leap, life-altering, right? Morally depraved leap, physically and metaphorically, to cross this line. And so you're committed, are you not? And then you take a few swipes at a vest. Just a bit strange.
Porque te conozco mucho tiempo, como que un año.
Then what follows, which I just find kind of weird as well. I'm just trying to get into this evil man's headspace, right? This unhinged or evil man, this soldier of Allah or whatever, right? He's committed to this thing. He's ran up. He had carte blanche on the guard. He stabbed the vest, and then he backs up. Now, if you're insane enough, radical enough to do this, you're like, in a sick sense, selfless. You have lost your mind, right? And so you are like a wild animal, basically, and you're just going for it. You're detached from your body almost. You're just so full of violence and commitment. The fact that he kind of backs up and starts dancing around, like shadow boxing kind of thing, backing off as these two lads reach for their weapons, right? He does. Am I right to say that? He kind of backs off. Like they kind of shoo him away. But for a man who was so unhinged and evil that he ran in to stab a guard, you would think that you would just go in a frenzy. It doesn't matter if someone palms you away. You just go in a frenzy. You keep going, right? But he doesn't really. He kind of plays a dance a little bit. I don't know. Probably just nothing. Just saying.
Como que un año.
Look, all the guard has to do is kind of wave his hands around a little bit, and the guy kind of offers the space, right? Gives space, waits a little bit, and lets it kind of, something kind of just play out a little bit. Just a bit odd on its own. Definitely not evidence of anything.
Como que un año.
Look the way he sort of. He's like, I thought you were out of your mind, consumed with bloodlust. why are you now getting conservative and sort of letting them have time and backing up? And I just again, I'm just explaining why it just, in a sensory way, the whole thing just comes across odd to me. That's just one aspect.
Trae un cuchillo, ¿no?
Look, run up,
Haz para atrás.
kind of run back.
Bate, 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 bate.
Again, you've committed to all this. Are you really that afraid of a slap of a baton? I mean, you just, for apparently no reason, ran up on a guard with a knife. You're crossing a major line. You must be mentally ill or, what's the word? Fanatical religious zealot. Either way, like, so now you're sort of wary of a baton or a hand or something, and sort of just standing around. You're not just selflessly in his unhinged perspective, because he doesn't care about himself anymore. He is just consumed. You're not just running in, swiping, going for it. You're suddenly kind of basically dancing around it, right? It's just a weird change of instinct, change of heart, compared to what I'm used to seeing in similar types of scenes.
Trae un cuchillo, ¿no? Haz para atrás. Bate, 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 bate.
Sorry, I paused at that critical moment there, but it's just weird. I mean, that's all. It's not really like a verbose way of me putting it, but you know, he kind of dances around with the guards for like, I don't know, 20 seconds or however long after taking the initial swipe. And even while they were kind of reaching for the weapons or pushing the buttons or whatever they're going for, they were actually occupied with that. A man with a knife could have just dived at him again. And they say it's very hard to control a knife wielder, even if you're a bit stronger than them, because, of course, you grab one hand, they kind of pass it to the other and they get your arms. Apparently, it's like your odds are very bad at dealing with anyone with a knife, right? So while they're reaching for their baton or whatever, and you can see they struggle with the clip a little bit, they're a bit slow to it. He had ample opportunity to dive in as a fanatic. He didn't. He actually backs up. He backs up and jigs on the spot, and waits, and then is wary of a little baton or a little hand or a little bit of, and he does that, nothing but that, for the next while, until eventually this mystery individual in a hood, I believe, black clad, comes up behind him, and without, it's unclear, of course, I'm speculating, but what looks like, and not a huge amount of force, he doesn't deck him, you know, where you can see the impact. He doesn't do a hardcore judo throw where he really lashes him to the ground. You know, sometimes you hear the thud when someone goes down hard, right, from a throw. He seems to not, he doesn't run at him like gains inertia from kind of running at him and like almost just shoulders him, right, with a big impact. He kind of just seems to walk up behind him and just kind of like lightly tug him to the ground. And that's possible. But like, it's just a bit odd. Like maybe he did. Like, I don't know the force of the pull. I'm not like hanging anything on that. I'm just saying, you know, he just kind of whips him down. It wasn't a whole lot of fight there from this guy, let's say. So yeah, so just checking chat out there. I know you're going back and forth, but yeah, he's on the ground now from this mystery man who just happened to be there, and basically a noble civilian who jumps in, and God bless his heart, right? But he pulls him down with ease, and then the guards go for him, and then he starts to control the scene. And again, I'm not saying he's a guard. He's probably just, that would be disparaging, right? He's a good citizen who jumped in and saved his compatriots, right? He should be awarded. But so I'm absolutely not saying he's a guard, but he's so cool on the spot, so collected, that he acts like a guard in the sense that he controls the scene. I've seen in cases where riots in Dublin or this or that, or migrant things going on, political protests and stuff. I've seen issues happen. You see videos online where the guards get into some scuffle or whatever with someone, and what'll happen is, while the guard's having the scuffle or while there's an issue going on, it gets kinetic in some kind of way. You will, of course, have another guard or two who go straight in like this, right, around the scene. I don't know if you can see me there, but they start going back. They start shooing people away, right? And of course, that comes with training. I have to assume it's a logical thing to do, but it's also a very specific thing that they do. And they control the scene. They form a sort of a perimeter, control the scene naturally. This guy, I have to assume, is not a guard, but he certainly acts very like one in his demeanor, right? The fact that he took the guy down with ease and then immediately goes to control the scene, which is just cool, collected, and guardy-like poise, which is impressive from a bystander civilian.
Kick that.
And again, I'm kind of being tongue in cheek, right? But legitimately, I want to be fair here, right? I'm critically evaluating it from a certain perspective, but legitimately, he, like, no sarcasm at all here. He could have been a bystander, and he could have just had the sense to go, get the fuck away. The scene is what it is. Let's be fair, right? It could have been that, but just, it does look, with everything else, it can feel a bit like, well, who's this guy? How well? I don't know. Now, the other thing is, there's so many questions. Like, I mean, you could say I have to stretch the argument to make, it's like I'm trying to make every little detail make sense, which of course anyone can do at any event if you have a prescribed narrative. I get that. But still, and I don't want to sound crazy too much, but like when they're like there's some stuff that's a bit wild, but if we're playing this game, if we're entertaining it, some people say, well, why would a guy, an accomplice, the actor who is playing the attacker, let's say, why would he take a battering on the ground, let's say? And some people have said he looks padded up, and I'm not saying that, right? But I don't see it and go, that's impossible. If this were to be a setup, I suppose, and you were saying, well, he's going to do the stabbing, someone's going to get a video, nobody's really going to be harmed, and you're going to have to take a little beating on the ground, but like we'll pad you up and maybe we'll try to miss you as much as possible with the battens, and maybe we could go for the lighter variant of batten. You could do little things so that there's like a beating that could be plausibly not totally fake looking, but is not like brutal. Like, we're not cracking your skull open, with the heaviest batten. Maybe you could wear a thing. This is just in the wild theory where you're entertaining this, right? That is possible. Like, basically, if someone were to say, no, he takes a beating on the ground, that dismisses any kind of conspiracy theory. Well, if you're going to say that, then there could be a counter argument that, well, he could have a little bit of shielding on, and the beating could be kind of like half-arsed or missing a bit and avoiding critical parts of the body, that kind of thing. And your man could also be saying, well, you can clip me a bit, try your best or whatever, and so be it. Like, it wouldn't be the end of the world. I'm just saying that, I'm not saying that all those things are probable or something. I'm just saying, from the orthodox view of this event, the fact that he takes sort of a few slaps on the ground wouldn't in itself rule out that it's a setup, if that makes sense, right? Just logically, because the beating, there's a lot of missed shots, there's a lot of not cracking him on the skull. Now, I know they have rules not to kill people, I suppose, if that's their training, not to immediately crack people's heads open. But I mean, if you've just been stabbed, I don't know, maybe people would go hardcore on it. I don't mean to belabor it, but what I'm saying is the beating is not off the wall. If they were absolutely cracking him to bits, breaking his bones left, right, and center, you'd go, I do not see how someone would be accomplice to that sort of brutality, even if they were paid, or, I just don't, that makes it totally impossible that it was a setup. The beating is vague enough to not be that, if that makes sense, in my opinion. that doesn't necessarily mean anything. The other question would be injuries to the guard, right? The guard is reported to have suffered reasonably minor injuries, like not life-threatening or any of that, and I think released from hospital today or tomorrow or already previously. But like, you know, he didn't lose an organ or anything like that, or have an arm half chopped off, and nothing like that to my knowledge. And there's the question of blood, and this is, I know it's like, oh, does he have a blood pack, or is he this, or is he all this kind of stuff. I don't want to go down there, but what I will say is it's subjective, but there's no clear blood, right? Maybe he's bleeding, maybe he's not. Maybe it's crazy conspiracy theory. Maybe it's Occam's razor. Let's just be realistic. It is what it is. But I'm just saying, if you're examining it critically from a certain perspective, there may be blood. Maybe I'm not seeing it, but I can't see it. I've had a few people online say, yeah, I couldn't see blood anywhere. I had one person say they were there and they believe it was legit and that I'm wrong. And they even themselves said, I didn't see blood, but he looked to be injured. Now, that person was an anonymous person on X, so it doesn't mean anything. But what I'm saying is, I haven't heard anyone say with positivity that here is a shot where he's bleeding, here's whatever. He may well be, he probably is, right? But there is not an absence of blood, but an absence of visible evidence of blood from the perspective of a skeptical viewer, right? That isn't there. Does that mean anything? Right, but just a point. Now we have, see, the more I get into it, the more I think, oh no, someone's going to think, oh, Garrod is he's leaning too much into, because why don't we just take it for what it is and all this? So I'm caveating myself, just in an interjection here, is that politically speaking, someone says, why would he do this? Why bother? Like, just let it go. Ignore it if you want to ignore it. Why put effort into this harebrained idea you have or something? You know, there's almost political capital in it, in a way, from a nationalist point of view. Why would you look, not a gift horse, it's a terrible event and all that, but politically speaking, in a certain sense, it vindicates your worldview and our worldview. Why muddy the waters on that with this nonsense, someone could say. And my answer to that would be, whether I'm right or wrong, or to look into this, my answer to that would be, there's so many nationalists, all domestically and internationally, looking at this and saying, oh, Ireland has had enough, and Muslims and migrants and this and that, and the Garda, the irony of enforcing plantation, maybe now they will understand, blah, blah, blah. That's being said by many, 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 many people, almost everyone to a man, accounts and figures far bigger than me, vocally and repeatedly putting this out there. That narrative is perfectly fine. Little old me over in the corner, taking a different look at it or whatever, is not going to burst that bubble. It's in no danger of that. So whether I'm off the wall or not or whatever, it's no harm for me as a sort of a salve to everything else, over in the corner, small figure of me entertaining it. So just in terms of, it might seem, oh, it's a lot of detail, he's reaching and all this. Well, look, it's the mainstream, the main nationalist narrative is in no danger from me entertaining some of this, just to note. Now we get back to the details. The car response, right? Pepe Silva with the chalkboard or the corkboard and the crazy idea. The response time. So it's Capel Street intersecting with Little Britain Street, somewhere there. And someone pointed out to me that there is a guard station close by. They initially said it's Store Street, and I found that Store Street's 17 minutes away. And then AI questioned what's the nearest guard station. They said Store Street as well. I was like, well, it's very far away. But then it turns out, oh no, I'm not a Dubliner. There's a place called the Bridewell Garda Station, which is about 750 meters away. I don't have the map in front of me, but it's kind of quite near. But it's like up a street to the right and then to the right, you know, type of thing like that. and but it is close by. And of course, guards' cars can, in an emergency, they could take the pedestrian streets, I imagine, and the rest of it. But the theory on the very rapid response time would be, well, there's guards everywhere in Dublin. You're in D1. It's infested with crime, and thus it's also infested with plainclothes guards. I've seen them. Undercover vehicles, uniformed guards, all sorts. Probably guys in suits walking around pretending to go to work are also guards. You know, there's a lot of Garda presence there in the city under the surface. So they're everywhere. So it wouldn't be that hard for them to get there really fast. On the counter side, people say, well, no, it was suspiciously fast, and that's not evidence in itself, but it's another detail that's just a little bit perfect, right? The fact that the squad car rolls up very quickly, right? And so that's your dialectic on that. So I went to examine it. It could go either way, but just like the likelihood is it's just a good response time and that's it. But I said, let's think about it though. So you have the stabbing happens at like 3 seconds in this video. The squad car arrives around the corner at 1 minute, 1 second. So that is your 58-second gap, right? From the moment the man first swipes at the guard to when the squad car rounds the corner. Siren goes off a second or two before that. We won't fall out over the details, right? But so there's like a 58-second response, right? Now, there's debate over, we don't know how the Garda ops work, right? Over the radio. So they don't get to, it could only be after about 17 seconds or maybe a bit more, where the Gardaí are visible. One goes off screen at 17 seconds, where he might have put in a radio call. Someone else said it happened at 48 seconds, so you can actually hear it. Other people say, no, they would have, when they were reaching for their buttons and stuff, they have a panic button, right? Which is logical as well. But of course, the panic button, after being swiped at, even for the most poised of a guard, which neither of these seem to be, in a alarming situation like that, of course there's going to be a delay. It's not like the moment you whip around, you see a guy with a knife, you immediately hit the button. There's going to be 10 odd seconds go by where you back up and kind of try to get away, and then after 10 odd seconds goes by, you start to reach for your button, you start to press your panic button and all that. So your 58 from initial swipe to squad car becoming visible, that 58 seconds reduces by at least 10 seconds. It could be 30 seconds. I don't know. Let's split the difference and say 15, 20 seconds. So you go from 58 seconds down to about 30, somewhere between 30 and 40 seconds, right? If you're, from alert to guards show up, we'll say about 40 seconds. And the thing is with Store Street as well, if what I looked up, did a few calculations, that the distance between Bridewell Garda station and the scene, that little area there, whatever it is, 750 meters. I looked up how fast a swallow, a bird, a very fast, agile bird that could go very fast in short sprints or whatever, how fast a swallow could get from Bridewell station to this scene, and it said about 30 seconds sort of max, or like minimum thereabouts for a swallow. That's going literally as the crow flies, right, in flight. It would take about 30 seconds. So with traffic, I know they have emergency response, but they still can't run people over, so they still have to bob and weave and get there, right? And they obviously aren't getting there in 30 seconds from the station. So the idea that the station is so nearby, they could rock up in less than 40 seconds from the station itself. That technically, if I'm not mistaken, wouldn't be possible. Now, that doesn't mean anything crazy. The car could have been just nearby. It could have been in circulation. It's very possible, right? It doesn't have to be the station. But the other thing is it rocks around that corner to your right on screen, speculating. But even though there's noise in the video, there's the shouting and stuff, I do expect that if that car had to come from any distance at all to the scene in such a swallow-like speed, right, very fast, Obviously, nobody disputes that it was a very, very good response time, right? It's just a question of how that was possible or whatever. Could have been just good luck or good practice or whatever. But when the car arrives, and I know cars have brakes and they can decelerate, I get that. But, usually if a car is going at sort of rapid response, you will hear, of course, an engine going, accelerating, the sound of an engine in a sort of a low gear to speed ratio, which is what you do when you're trying to boot it, right? Quickly. You don't hear a kind of a low gear, high acceleration car approaching. And that's a pretty loud thing, right? If someone's going booting it, right? And also you don't see the car sort of come across the corner and enter a sort of a braking. Like we went from a fast speed to kind of rocking up. Almost, to be fair, kind of like a movie, or kind of like just any kind of speed you see a car going fast and whipping around the place, boy race or whatever. This kind of rapid acceleration, rapid deceleration, loud noises, the rest of it, as you get with cars. You don't hear that acceleration noise coming up the tunnel of the street at all, really. And also then the car rounds the corner in a fairly measured and fairly slowish and calm enough manner. So what I'm saying is, if you combine that with the speed of the reaction, which is like, very quickly, you have to conclude that the car was either around the corner initially, or very, 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 very small distance down that street from which it came. You know what I mean? They didn't drive, sort of go 0 to 120 in 10 seconds from further away and make this hardcore approach. The other thing as well is, but when the panic button goes off and they get I don't know how the tech works, but you would imagine on the responding officer end as well, just because of human reaction time, there has to be maybe 10 odd seconds for you to, like, your beep thing to go off and it to provide a location, and you look at the other guy with you and go, oh fuck, okay, let's go. And like, you have to check your mirror, you have to not kill someone as you drive, so you have to do basic check, right, and gather yourself for just a second as you respond. So there just has to be like a 10-second lag from when the guys initially hear a beep to they make their way to said location. They have to kind of go, where exactly? Okay, let's go. 10 seconds must go by there, right? So when you factor all that in, it's a very short period of time. There's no rapid acceleration. They kind of cruise around the corner. Suffice it to say, the car had to be around the corner, either immediately around the corner or very little distance down that street when your man ran up on them. And that by itself is not evidence of malfeasance or that this is a conspiracy. It's not. But it's just a fact that the car was there the whole time, in effect. Was it just circulating and it's good luck and they have good SOPs and all the rest of it? Maybe. But it was there, right? It had to have been. Just by definition, it had to have been there. So you go back to the video was on the spot. The guy stabbed for the stab vest. The guy backed off and gave them space and then just danced around on the spot, had suddenly become scared of being swiped at. The third party guy in the black rocked up and with ease brought him to the floor and then sort of cordoned the scene off a little bit for the guards. And then the car, which must have been in effect around the corner or shortly before that, was just there. I'm just putting those things together. In themselves, they're not a thing. Even all together, they don't prove anything. But they are what they are as well, if you're critically evaluating it from a skeptical point of view. There are other things too, like, the guard seemed to have full mobility of that arm originally. Look, it could be adrenaline. You can counter and counter argue. You can say, well, that's just ridiculous, and there's a plausible explanation for that. There's loads of other little details that, if you want to, excuse me, you could say, well, that's a bit sus and that's a bit sus. I'm focusing on the core things: the camera, the fact that he stabbed. It seemed like very knowingly to the vest. The third party guy, the other guy who isn't a guard and is just a solid bystander, the car having just been around the corner, those are the kind of main bits for me. And there's other things that you could say, oh, the vibe's off, the reactions don't seem all that stunned. This, I don't know. Those things are looser, but the key details would be the camera to begin with. I don't know, is the fact that it went to gripped after 2 days of all places, and everything else. Does that say something as well? Probably not. But yeah, you have the shot. You have the stabbing at the vest. You have the backing off the guards. You have the bystander jumping in, acting very professionally, and you have the guard car parked around the corner the whole time, in effect. They don't necessarily mean anything, but they're interesting. Okay, I think that's that. I just saw a chat comment there that I find kind of interesting. I'll get into one more little wrap-up aspect of it, and but it was a comment that almost speaks to what I want to talk about. Someone says, Big Bang says, doesn't matter if it was staged anyway. Normies can't comprehend psyops. As others said, it'll probably be used to arm the Gardaí. Actually, okay, that's a very useful comment. Thank you for spurring my bringing that to mind. That's a cat. In terms of if someone said, like, why would they psyop that? I won't even get this broad geopolitical bigger idea stuff. I've talked about it before. And the ultimate answer, if someone says, why would they psyop this? Like, I'm willing to entertain you, Garrod. I'm not going to dismiss you or insult you or whatever, but like, obviously anything could theoretically be true, but what's the cui bono? Why? For what? And that's a legit question. It's like, and I've said to people, look, precisely, I don't quite know. Which is an argument in favor of it just is what it is. Let's just relax and be Occam's razor about this stuff, right? But the grand narrative, if you have a theory, then there must be a grand narrative to back it up, which I usually would do. I mean, don't put forward a theory unless you have means, motive, all the rest of it, surrounding circumstantial evidence, up and down, a really strong case. There isn't I don't have a preset solid, here's the exact logic of it. Although I do a little bit. Like I say, it's this sort of amping up of the right wing, the Muslim Palestinian thing. That's not, of course, Islamic terrorism is real, right? But on the other side, it's real, but a lot of it is suspect as well. The migrant attacks in 2016, the migrant crisis, and you had the Charlie Hebdo, you had Nice, you had Brussels, you had all that. I don't see how all of that was psyoped and fake. It's a bit out there. Some people believe that. But I also can't help but say, I don't buy the idea that it was all fake. It was all MK Ultra. It was all Israel or whatever. It's hard to buy that. There is Islamic radicalism. It does happen. There was wars in the Middle East at the time. It, legit is what it is. But it's hard to shake the idea that something was afoot with that. The idea that one day it just seemed to all stop. We've had sporadic things, but in terms of the hardcore mass casualty, Nice, Brussels, Bataclan, Charlie Hebdo and all that, that was going 90 every 2 weeks for a while, right? And then it just sort of disappeared at that scale. It's never been explained to me how or why exactly that happened. And I just, again, I'm being vague, but it's like, I can't shake a funny feeling about the idea of Islamic violence in the West. It's not all fake. It's got entirely legitimate organic grounds and all of that. But there is something fishy about it, right? You could take 9/11. Are you a 9/11 truther or not, is the question. Well, let's not get into it. 9/11, were the planes holograms? No. This, that, and the other. Did they plant this in the building and that and the other? Who knows, right? So was it this huge grand conspiracy theory where everything was fake? Almost certainly not. But is it exactly as described? And was there the fact that it was grounds for this endless war on terror, and Israel loved it, and the deep state in America and the neocons and all that stuff? Is there a sort of a something fishy about it in general in that way? Absolutely, right? Can I describe exactly? I could go on, but like, and I needn't. I think a lot of people agree that, yeah, there's something a bit funny about all that. So there is a reek around the Islamic terrorism thing, organic and lamentable and alarming and real as it is. There's also a reek about it, right? So I'll just say that in general. The why, what was this for? I've explained for months that there is this concert, undeniable, I believe, Zionist psyop on the right that has been going for ever on the right. Since I ever got into it, the pro-life and all that before, there's been these actors within the right wing who are directly connected to, like, the US deep state, to British intelligence and all of that. I would speculate, let's say, right? A lot of people would believe that. And it's only become like glaringly, gaudily obvious from street protest to media to all sorts within the right wing. This amping up in the last 6 months out of nowhere, right? Counter jihad has existed forever. As far as I know, Islamic attacks in the West haven't been especially pervasive or anything in the last, let's say, 5-6 months. But for some reason, there was this algorithm adjustment in Ireland over the last few months where it's become Muslims, Palestine, the left, Palestine, Muslims, Taqiyya, Jizya, the Ummah, blah, 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 all this stuff, right? And I've talked about that at large, and I've said this is kind of obvious, right? And so for, like, hypothetically, we'll say this could be totally real, it probably is, but hypothetically, if there were to be false flags, if you believe in the possibility of false flags, and if one were to happen, and if you were then trying to say why, well, there would be a why. A why would be there, hypothetically. Yeah, okay, yeah. Who's being psyoped? The normies don't even know enough or get enough to be psyoped. This would be too complex for them to even get anyway. They'd just be saying it's a religion of peace and we're all the same or whatever anyway. So how would this psyop work on them? Well, what if the psyop wasn't for them? What if it was for you? What if it was for me and you? What if the reaction, our pent-up reaction, I don't want to say glee, someone got stabbed, it's terrible. But there's a political vindication and validation that comes from this, where people go, look, I win. Was it white? Was it Muslim? Was it black? All this kind of stuff, right? A group that wants to win, the individual that wants to win, gets validated and vindicated and excited and radicalized and excited by this, and becomes a political, has a predictable and trackable reaction to this kind of stuff. Your very reaction could be entirely predicted, and it could drive a political sentiment within a sub-movement in a country, right, for a certain end and all the rest of it. So that's off the wall, right, we'll say, but it kind of makes sense. Well, you'll give me that, at least, that there's at least a some logic there, right? That, there would actually be a discernible thread there on why. I could have said to you, even though you could say I'm totally wrong, let's say you totally disagree with me in a few months, but if you go with my theory that there's this big Zionist thing drumming up the Muslim thing, it's all related back to Palestine and all this, and the left, because the left support Palestine, they don't like that. And so the way you get at Palestine is to frame it around Muslims, counter jihad, post 9/11, George Bush. We've seen it all kind of before. Well, just to deepen and drive that sentiment, you have protests on the street against the Shias and people going raving mad at the GPO but ignoring the Indians, and you have sort of in Cork and all the flags and all the rest of it I've talked about. That's all a bit fishy. And then if you're the entity that is kind of driving this thing, of course you would say, well, if we could have some sort of, flagship event, mass casualties, of course, false flag wise, historically are hard to pull off. They are high cost, of course, if those are possible, and if those have happened, which they have in the past. Just look at USS Liberty or something like that. People died, right? But of course, any entity would be, even a devious Machiavellian deep state would be reluctant to do that because there's high cost to that, high culpability to that. What if you could have the same effect, but no one actually got hurt? And you didn't even have to come up with anything complex. You didn't have to have hologram planes, or you didn't have to have 100 crisis actors and a massive scale network to get away with it, or something like that. What if it could be done so easily that, because the people are so chomping at the bit for their political vindication and all of that, so drummed up, that they wouldn't even question it? You just put together something simple. Nobody even ends up really getting hurt, but it's a Muslim and it's an Allah Akbar and it's this and it's that. So it's the same effect as if 5 people were killed, but you don't even have to do that much. You just need a handful of people playing along, and nobody even has to get hurt. So easy, right? The question is, like, would that be possible? Like, would they do that? Would that be possible? Well, the answer would be probably they didn't, but it would be, right? It would be exceedingly possible, doable, and there would be motive, and there would be means, and all of that, and there would be, like I say, motive. And again, you know, the same right wingers. I'm not saying it's bad to react to it. Muslims, immigrants are taking over, etc. That's grand, right? That's the narrative, and to a large extent, that's true. I speak out against it a lot, but you know, let's be real. If there was some Irish scumbag, and you'll say this is a talking point straight from the left, but I'm just being. This is just an observation. It's real, right? If there was some scumbag in Athlone a few days ago, took a swipe at a guard out of nowhere because he's just hopped up, he's off his head, whatever it is, right? He took a swipe at a guard. It was kind of captured on a grainy bit of video. He took a swipe at a guard and they took out the batons. Someone pulled him down and they battered him. And the guard had a minor injury to his arm. You couldn't even really see it on video, but like he allegedly did. It was some scumbag, whatever. You know, no one would pay attention to that. Like the actual the technical gravity of the event is actually quite minor in the grand scheme of degenerate Ireland, right? So it's not the act was that outlandish or that bloody or anything like that. It's the fact that he shouted Allah Akbar and he's foreign and all that. That's what excites, for better or for worse, for justified or not. That's what excites the passions, right? But in itself, the event wasn't actually that spectacular, in a sense. So anyway, you know, I'm just kind of mushing a bunch of thoughts together there. In terms of the motive, like you say, their normies can't comprehend the psyop. Who cares if it was staged anyway? I would say, well, if there's a possibility it was staged, and if there's a logic or at least a theory, just a passing theory to entertain, well, I suppose it does matter. It is kind of consequential because it would fit into like what is going on with our politics. You know, what are we focusing on? Are we this kind of like rat in a cage that like has this is growing used to this Pavlovian sort of state, you know, of like extremely predictable, trained in, unskeptical, rush to the scene, rush to react sort of state? Are we in that state? Are we so easily driven one way and driven another way? Like I say, everybody down at the GPO with this recent hype on Muslims, because up until, and I'm not like he's defending Muslim, I'm not, whatever, right? But up until about 6 months ago, it was asylum centers. That's something I've driven myself for years, very passionate about, right? Asylum centers, replacement, plantation, Indian, Muslim, African, European, Albanian, whatever, right? We are being planted. It's got there's a theory to it. It's real. It's in our faces. It connects to communities. It's totally justified, totally palatable. No, it's unimpeachable, and it's not niche and sort of, in a sense, xenophobic or like overly excited by the nature of the foreigner. It's just about ourselves and our rights and all that kind of stuff. And it's unapologetic, but it's, you know, if you kind of just get what I'm trying to say there, it's different in its quality. And then it transformed into this sort of foaming at the mouth to counter jihad thing out of nowhere. And now I sense that sort of dog-like Pavlovian vulnerability to that sort of snap the fingers and the like this kind of flicker around reaction. So easy to move the tennis ball around and just give the reaction, the reaction. And that's just, and maybe it's a legit event and there's nothing to it, but I'm just a bit concerned on a wider view about that general thing there. That, well, okay, the concern goes off plantation centers and cost of living and the structure of our society and the hegemonic sovereignty, who rules us and what rules us and what's the nature of it and what is our broader issue. And it turns into, this fella did this and this happened, is this that, is that that, and we're this and we're that. This kind of jumping dog reaction to smaller, more like micro as opposed to macro level issues, in a sense. Not that those don't matter. And it's also, let's just make a note about the guards, right? I don't want to be misconstrued here. I'm not saying I'm delighted because it's a guard and I have an issue with the guards. I'm not saying that at all. I've no problem with individual Gardaí and I don't wish violence against the Gardaí collectively or any of that, right? But what I will say is, like, you know, how do I put it without sounding callous or being misconstrued? Say you have a neighbor who broke their leg they slipped and broke their leg, and that neighbor has helped you in times of need. You have a great graw for them. They're great. You've so much respect for them, and they've helped you out. And they fell and broke their leg, and you want to go over and bring them food, and you want to help them. Say, I'll bring you up to the hospital for your appointments, and I'm heart's broken. I hate to see you suffer, and all this kind of stuff for your neighbor who you love, who's had a great relationship with you. And then, on the other hand, you could have someone 20 doors down who has always done you wrong. He robbed your lawnmower. His kids egged your window. He told you to fuck off when you told them to ask them to stop. He spread rumors about you. Has just been a thorn in your side forever, right? Started on you in town one day and gave you a broken nose. Whatever. You have a bad history with him. And the history has been one way. They have been very bad to you. Now, you hear that he broke his leg, fell and slipped in an accident. Now, you're not saying, I'm delighted. I love to see that person suffer. I hope it happens again. I hope it happens to his wife, right? You're not saying that. You're saying, you're not a vindictive, callous person who enjoys to see people suffer. But in the way that you went out of your way, you highly prioritized the suffering of your neighbor who broke his leg. You go, I don't celebrate the fact that my enemy down the road broke his leg, or my rival. I don't celebrate it. I don't take joy in it, but I certainly am not that sad compared to my neighbor. It's a priority, right? It's a differentiation on the relationship you have with them. You probably see where I'm going with this, right? I don't condone, I don't wish it upon the guards, but I've limited tears to shed, right? there's so many people need my tears, and there's only so many I have to give, right? And so when I allocate them, there's a person fell off their bike in Athlone. There's a person got robbed in Donegal. There's a guy who hasn't gotten medical treatment for years and he's dying in Kerry. And there's a guy got stabbed in Cork, and a civilian and there's a migrant who attacked someone, this, that, you name it, right? There's all these things. And I have to prioritize as a human being who my empathy goes to, right? And so, you know, like, a guard gets attacked by a migrant like this. I wish it didn't happen. I hope it doesn't happen again. But also, much like that neighbor who has done so much bad to me, the guards have been the ones. I'm not saying they deserve it, and I'm not saying I'm happy, right? But they pepper sprayed old ladies in Newtown Mount Kennedy. They pepper sprayed old ladies in Coolock. They beat the shit out of people. They took people who hadn't even done anything and put them in a coffin, basically, and dragged them to in a transport vehicle, right? Like a Hannibal Lecter type situation, and fucked them into a cell overnight and brought them up on charges and all this kind of stuff. They're monitoring Keith Woods over in London. They monitored the the infamous 20 people. They're monitoring us all. They're harassing us all. They deprive us of our rights. If you notice that this stabber, if we take the story at face value, the stabber who stabbed and is sincere and legit and above board, what happened. He was given his overnight rights. He exercised his right to sleep that night. I believe your man Riyadh, who stabbed the kids on Parnell Street, he has all sorts of rights. I can't think of examples to Joseph Puska. All his rights have been respected, right? Meticulously respected, right? His rights. This vile vermin, right? Who brutally killed a jewel of Ireland, right? What more could you want for a daughter or a mother or any such relationship? I never knew her, but she seemed like the perfect representation of what we love of Ireland, right? And he slaughtered her like an animal. And a lot of his family were in on it. And the scumbag should never have been here, never worked, cycling around on his bike in a 4-bedroom house in Tullamore, taking the absolute fucking piss, and then slaughters one of our best. And they all lie about it, and they cover it up, and they cover for each other, and they're all given their full suite of rights. The process, the rest of it, it's a liberal country. What do we get? We get monitored. If I say, why am I being monitored? What law did I break? What law am I accused of breaking? What law am I... Even suggest a law that you're not accusing me of, but you might suggest. No law, no nothing. Monitoring. They're liking tweets of Antifa on Twitter, right? Who are doxing us, effectively trying to ruin our lives. The guards are liking those. They liaise with Niamh MacDonald and Mark Malone in the Far Right Observatory, Open Courage Collective. You name it. They're on us. They hate us. They deprive us of our rights in a way that they don't Joseph Puska and his scumbag family. They beat the shit out of us on the street. They cracked Phil Dwyer on the leg for doing journalism and injured his leg on the night of the riots in Dublin for covering the event. You name it, on and on and on, right? And they have facilitated. They pushed over and beat people in Rosscray, right? This town has been decimated. More to say on that on another day. They've done unspeakable things and broken my heart in the last 5 years, right? And they've done it oftentimes with a grin and a smirk, seen it eye to eye, right? Not all of them love it. Some of them hate it, but they just have to do it, etc. But as a force, in general, they've been complicit, right? And so I take no delight in it. I wish it didn't happen, and I hope it never happens again. But I've only got so many tears to shed and so many things to talk about, so many people to defend that I have capacity for. And I'm afraid to say that the guards don't quite make the cut for me, and I wish them well. And for me, when I see the right wing jump at this, right? The same guards, they jump and they say, the guard, our guards, our Gardaí, this and that. And they say, our Gardaí need guns. The same fucking Gardaí in Newtown and Mount Kennedy beating the shit out of us. They need guns. Right? Because a Muslim. Because it was a Muslim. We need the guards. Owen McCabe, the tech bro, friend of probably Patrick Collison, all these guys, right, is now a troubadour, a voice for right-wing nationalism. He says the guards need guns. Those guards need guns. No. I do not react like that, right? I'm clear on what's going on. I'm not a dog. I'm not Pavlovian. I'm skeptical, right? And I'm coherent and I remember. So no, the guards get guns to point at us. Ultimately to shoot us, right? Remember the Hibernian Liberation Front, snipers doing their exercises, shooting at a hypothetical group called Hibernian Liberation Front, taking headshots from a mile away. That's what they're talking about for us, right? And we want to shout and scream as their most vocal supporters for them to have guns because a Muslim, because Allah Akbar. And when I turn around and say, well, can we ask a few questions? Can we stop and say, this does look a bit odd. What is this, right? People say, shut up. You're somewhere on the bell curve, the bad side of it. you're this, you're that, you're unhinged, you're whatever, right? These anonymous accounts piling onto me all of a sudden. All a bit sus. That's all I'm saying. No, I don't want them to have guns, and no, I don't have enough tears, and no, I'm not reacting. It is what it is, you know. And I know I sound passionate and personal about that, but I've seen too much, right? I've been there. I was there with Phil Dwyer. We drove up one day to a church in Cavan where 3 squad cars had the church surrounded, because this is different to the migration question, which is fundamentally the main thing for me. But 3 or 4 squad cars surrounding from every side a church in the middle of Cavan, that's in the absolute middle of nowhere, as much as you can imagine in the countryside, a small church in the middle of nowhere, because that priest had said, I have 10 old ladies who still want to come to mass. I'm going to say mass for them. And the media made a thing out of it, and the guards dutifully arrived at the scene every Sunday or every whenever it was to cordon off the church. These little old ladies couldn't go to mass of their own free will with this priest who was willing to say it to them. And to my shame, I believe my wife might have been pregnant at the time. I can't quite remember. And I had a job that I didn't want to lose because we needed the money. Couldn't afford. She was maybe on mat leave. I'm not sure where we were, but I was like, I have to have my car and I have to have work, and I can't leave her on her own. And I've got responsibilities, you know. I weaseled out of it, and I said, Phil, you go in if you want. I'm going to drive on up the road and I'll circle back and come back to you. Phil went up and talked to the guards and insisted on going in and all that. I wish I had. I understand why I didn't at the time, but I wish I had, because it was an evil scene that was going on. When we rocked up initially, we played the game with them, and I said to the guard, well, he's my dad, and I'm bringing him for a check in the hospital, to Cavan Hospital. That's what we're doing. And he said, grand, and he let us go through, so we got to go through and see it all, get to the other side, and then walk back. And I remember saying to the guard, we played thick, said, guard, what's going on? There were 3 or 4 squad cars. It was like a murder scene that happened. And we played like we didn't know what was going on. We said, like something from Father Ted, the guard, what's going on here? Just out of curiosity, a lot of cars were in the middle of nowhere. Is there something going on, or is this? He said, no, just check. Because the cunt didn't have the balls to say, there's a mass and there's a few little old ladies, and that's why we're here. He didn't have the balls to say it. He just said, just to check. And all I've seen is weasel from these people. And again, I'll be clear. They have a job to do. They have to follow orders. This is in no way a justification or a reason to celebrate what happened, or any violence or ill will or anything done to the guards. It's not. But I'm just saying, again, I'm not jumping to put guns in their hands. Let's put it that way. The other point, sorry, I've gone off a bit. Put guns in their hands, right? Now, to be the vocal, the very people who've been at the end of their violence and their intimidation and their tactics for years, to suddenly on a dime turn around and say, which not everybody, but a lot of right-wing people are screaming from the rooftops, they need to be like good proper Americans, it's based or something, to have guns, be real men, and they need guns to fight the Muslims, whatever. To turn around and say that about them, well, what I would say is, I hope nothing bad ever happens to any guard, and I lament what happened to this one, but they need, because it's such a migrant chaos fest, and they're vulnerable, they need guns. Well, where's our guns? We're not allowed to even have pepper spray. All we can have is Defender 21, lads, right? All we can have is Fab Gel. And someone could have deep heat. But if you were found to have knowingly had that to protect yourself, you might be prosecuted, probably. So that's what your 70-year-old man can have going down the street. That's what your girlfriend can have. That's what your daughter can have, right? She's not allowed. She has to walk around up and down Parnell Street. That's what those kids and those teachers, defenseless, right? So no. We'll all be defenseless together. I insist. right? I insist, and I certainly won't shout from the rooftops for anything else. So that's all I'm saying. Anyway, you know, it ties into a lot. The gun advocacy, the Zionist US deep state MI5 stuff, and this liaising with loyalists, all this fishy stuff that's been going on does fit with this a little bit, right? And certainly, even if it's real, the reaction for guns and supporting the guards, and I support the guards against violence, but do I support the guards passionately as a force, as an ally, as a compatriot force, keepers of the peace, our thin blue line and all that? No way. Which is why initially, before I had seen this video, I just didn't say anything. I didn't say, yay, they've got their just desserts, because I don't believe that. Because I don't advocate for violence and for people to suffer. I take no joy in that, no matter who it is, my worst enemy. But I said to myself, no, a lot of stuff happens in Ireland. A lot of unfortunate stuff happens in Ireland. I don't talk about it all. Some of it is more relevant to my line of things. Some isn't. Some is just not for me. You know, I said, that's what it is to me. But I saw everyone clamoring, shouting from the rooftops, right? The guard this, the guard that, guns this, Muslim that, probably Palestine this, whatever, you name it. And I said, no. There's a lot of people get attacked by migrants, and a lot of unfortunate things happen. I've only got so many hours in the day. But of course, the right wing. And you know what? I'll be fair, because I feel passionately about it, and I sound glib. Not everybody who jumped at this and talked about this is some lemming, or I don't want to be like that, right? It's understandable. And it's legitimate to react to it and say, look, we have this crazed Muslim or a crazed migrant or whatever it is, if we take it at face value. So I want to retract that. There is a legitimate response, but just from my perspective, that's where I'm coming from. I'm just telling you that. And why I critically analyze this as well. So anyway, I kind of got a bit serious there, didn't I? It's just, honestly, I know, it's just over these years, I've been there on the cold night in Roscrea, -2, and all these people. And like an old man said, he said in Roscrea local, he said, you know, he said, it's been so many years, and he said, in a way, there's something special about this, because I can't remember the last time everybody came together in this way. Everyone's together because people are so passionate about it. This is our town. People are demoralized. People are disconnected. And this matters so much to them that they come together in unison to all oppose it. People dropping off firewood, companies, everyone, the whole community together against this. And what are they against? They're not against migrants. They're saying just nobody here is being harassed. We're just saying don't bring in busloads of people. The whole country supports us. The whole town supports us. We have every mandate in the world. We need a politician to stop this, anybody to stop this. But surely the guards, when they're told to raise their batons against us, they're our countrymen. Surely there's a point where they say no. They say, I'm sick. I've got a cold. I've got the blue flu, or I'm just not doing it. Okay, I'll take the sack. I'll say I'm sick and I'll leave and I'll never come back. Do whatever you got to do. Do not raise your baton against our people like that, right? And they did, and I saw it again and again, and I saw a few too many smirks, right? And so it means a lot to me, and I can't forget it, and that's just my thing with the guards. I don't want them to suffer, but just I don't have their sympathy, right? They won't allow us to have guns to protect ourselves, so it's just a case of mutuality, if that's a word, right? Anyway, yeah, every time I talk about it, I get passionate about it. This I don't get triggered by a lot, but my feeling about what the guards have done in the last few years runs so deep, right? Peacefully and respectfully, right? And individual guards might be great, and I get that, but we have to be clear about these things. Anyway, I still have a big super chat, or not a thing, but a fucking ordinary chat. I don't know how to get rid of it. How do I do that? Oh, see, that's it there now. I don't know. So, yeah, so it's way back. How do you get rid of it? I don't know. Anyway, look, I have one super chat here and I'll wrap it up. We have Martin O'Brien, SEK. Does anybody know what that is? Is that Korean yen or something like that? Anyway, thank you. Either way, it doesn't matter, right? Obviously, as in thank you and whatever about what it is. Keep up the good work, Irishman living in Sweden. Oh, so it's kroner, I assume. Swedish kroner, correct? Left with my family for a better life for my kids. Well, I hope you have your better life. And it's a pity that you had to do such a thing. Okay, now the screen's clear. Thank you. But yeah, Sweden, Scandinavia is nice. You know, yeah, I hope you're, doing good over there. They have, I think I was in Sweden passing through. I went from Norway to Denmark to Norway, and I think I went through Sweden in a road trip with a bunch of Norwegians. And all I remember is a lot of red barns, if I'm not mistaken, but a nice country by all accounts. So yeah, that's it anyway. I wanted to come on and do this. The last word, right, and say goodnight, is that I put up my tweet, which seemed like idle shit stirring, ruining the narrative, something like that, right? And I was accused, loads of bad faith people. Oh, you drink whiskey, you're with this, or I don't know, whatever. That's nonsense. But there were some people who maybe were sincerely saying, I think you're just being joker in the pack a little bit. I think you're just stirring the pot. Maybe you're just looking for clicks and just, buzz. Maybe you're just idly bored. Maybe you have some other agenda. I don't know. But you're kind of gaslighting. You're saying it might be, it's probably real, but it looks staged. You're sort of playing it both ways. You're gaslighting. You're just messing. And we don't like it because we have our narrative and we have our just cause and we have this and that. So why are you ruining it? Why are you this? Why are you that? And whether you agree with me or not on whether it was a fake event or whether it was a real event, but the reaction and the circumstances are in a sense fake, or there's other things going on. It's more than the immediate narrative reaction. There's more to all this. I just hope that's why I came live, is because I couldn't put it in a small tweet. There's a lot going on with it, right? I wanted to just kind of say, no, I'm not being idly difficult, right? And I'm not saying I know one thing or another, but there's a lot of background and there's a lot of circumstances around all this, which is why I feel this way, which is why I feel like these things ought to be pause, consider what's going on in the immediate scene. Is it real? Is it not? In a way, that's less relevant. How do we feel about the guards? We don't support bad things happening to them, but on a broader sense, have we suddenly become vocal supporters of the guards? Are we switching like that because it's a kind of binary or whatever? Like now it's a Muslim and a guard, so of course we're the guards' biggest defenders or whatever. And do we want them to have guns now because they need to be like cool Americans or something? Etc. There's a lot going on around it, so I just wanted to be like, no, accuse me of being wrong, accuse me of having the wrong idea or disagree, but it's not coming from an insincere place, not even slightly. And that's all. I just wanted to make that clear, and so we're just asking questions, we're just having a bit of fun, we're just looking at the different ideas and exploring it. A couple more super chats there. Armchair Limerick Nationalist, thank you for the support, 5 again. And Sheepdog 2. Okay, so thanks to everybody thank you for your super chats there. Thanks to everybody else in the chat for the whole night. I wish I could just sit here and read the chat, but I can't do that and speak at the same time. I'll have a look back and feel free to leave a comment. I don't always say this, but in this case, for anybody who watches after the fact, I would be interested to know your views. Disagree, agree, partially agree. The idea of epistemology in this crazy world of we don't know what to believe. How do you discern? How do you take things? Do you assume what Occam's razor? Does Occam's razor mean one thing or another thing? Which one is actually the most obvious explanation? I'm not sure anymore sometimes, right? And is it demoralizing? The broader politics, the question of the guards and being armed with firearms. All of that, there's loads there, so I genuinely would be reading the comments, but other than that, I'm just going to leave it there. Thanks everybody again for joining me. Go to bed, Take it easy. I'll see you soon. Ihawa.